So inshallah, in the spirit of time, and I'm just gonna quickly bullet through the topics of today. Do stop me if you have a question. Okay, we're gonna start off with the rights of spouses, then go on to questions to ask your potential, how to quell disagreements, divorce and annulment. There was actually a few more other topics that I was able to get as well, uh, uh, that I wanted to add, but I don't know if we'll have time today. The first question is the rights of spouses. Before I start, does anyone know what are the rights of spouses? Anybody? Husband's right, wife's right. Y'all should know this stuff. You know the Sahaba by the just because that TikTok became popping doesn't mean it was right, bro. There's a reason why I stopped posting. Um, no, but remember one thing. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, "Talabul ilmi farida ala kulli Muslim." It is fard to seek knowledge on every Muslim. Now, what knowledge is fard? The knowledge that is applicable to your life. So, when you are studying, it is fard for you to know how to study. When you are praying, it is fard for you to know how to pray. If you're going into business or stocks, it's fard for you to know how to do Islamic finance. If you're getting married or you even have the intention, and some of y'all have been on that intention for the last decade, it's fard on you to know the rulings of marriage. You have to know it. And it's not permissible for you to get into it without knowing it. The rights of spouses can be very easily explained in two things: the husband's rights and the wife's rights. The right the husband has from the wife is only one right. Only one right the husband has over the wife, and that is intimacy. The second thing is the rights of the woman over the husband. Number one, sukna, a place of residence. Number two, ta'am, food. And number three, libas, clothes. Three things are his right, your right from him. And there is only one thing that she has to do for you. Okay, now I'm going to break this down further. When it comes to food, clothes, and home, that's a really subjective field, right? Because a house could be a small studio, or it could be a mansion. But what's the parameter? The Sharia doesn't define it. The Sharia says you need to give your spouse a secluded area. Some people take that to mean that the spouse can have a separate house. That's not actually what it means. Because the houses of the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha says, I went to do sajda, the Prophet would do sajda, and before he did sajda, he would touch my foot, because the room was so small that when I stretched my feet, he couldn't do sajda. So all 11 wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, forget about mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, and all of that, the 9 wives of Nabi alayhi salam were literally neighbors to each other in one block of homes. And if you go to Medina Munawwara, how many of you have been for Umrah here? MashaAllah. When you go to Medina, that whole net where the Prophet's is buried, that was the hujurat of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, besides the last two. The last two is the home of, the last one is the home of Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu. So by sukna, it means a separate living area. Now, if you want to define that and say that I want to live separate from his parents, that's your prerogative. That's your choice. But doesn't mean he has to provide it. This is a fiqhi misconception. By sukna, the fuqaha have written a ghurfa. And by ghurfa, it means a separate area, a separate room. Because you have to contextualize it. They're not looking at Dallas, Texas, Plano's, or Frisco's mansions. They're talking about the little home that they had built. In this little area, you would have at least 10 homes would be built in this little area. If you're from Palestine or you're from any of those areas where they still have those old style homes, you'll know that this is the area. That being said, I strongly advise against living with parents when you first get married. I strongly advise against it. I believe that the first year at least of marriage should be spent independently. Because you just picked up a boy right now whose mommy did his laundry till the day before his wedding, right? So like he's still figuring this out. You have a sister over here who does not have the expectations, the responsibilities that has been poured on her. So when you start living with one another, you're still trying to figure yourself out. So giving yourself time to be able to make mistakes and figure yourselves out and fight is normal. The problem happens when you are living with someone else. I'm sure your mom is great and I'm sure your dad is great. Everyone says, but my mom is the sweetest. My dad is the sweetest. Yeah, you say that to everyone else, but you don't even talk to them at home. You can't hold a conversation with your mom or your daddy, but you want your wife or husband to hold a conversation with them. So my advice is don't do it. My advice is do it after a certain time. There are certain moments of intimacy. There are certain moments that develop an understanding that a person needs to do in seclusion. And you can't have another person's opinion on it. Even if parents don't get involved, it's very normal for a mother to go to her son and, Kya hua, beta? What happened? She looks a little off today. Is he treating you bad? Did he say something to you? Leave him now. That's not going to help the relationship, right? Those voices aren't going to help the relationship. Relationships usually get destroyed by bad advice. Even if forget about like marital relationships, even look at like amongst your own relationships. It's usually other people that cause the problem in your own relationship. And if you're the problem in your own relationship, then probably not a good relationship. If there is no other person as a problem and you two are the problem yourself. The second thing is when it comes to food and clothing, what does Sharia say? Again, Sharia says what is the norm, the average food. It is your job to give something, a meal a day, and it is your job to give at least a pair of clothes to 2 pair of clothes a year. That is what Sharia mandates. There's a reason why I'm saying all of this. And some of you are probably like, oh my God, I can't believe he said all that. There's a reason why I'm saying it. This is the fatwa. The fatwa is husband needs to provide a room, 1 meal, could be a loaf of bread, and a pair of clothes. And the wife doesn't have to do anything. Literally nothing. But if you live your life like this, your life's going to be hell. If you live your life on fatwa and just fixate on what you have to do, your life won't be good. It won't be a pleasant life. Your life has to be built on taqwa. And taqwa means that you do beyond what you're required to do. If your relationship starts off with saying that I'm going to clean one day, you're going to clean one day. This is my goal, this is yours. You already know that you're going back into another contract. It's like you're signing up for a job. And Allah describes a relationship in the Quran by saying, وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Allah says the secret ingredient of marriage, what is it? وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. And I tell people, if you want to give someone a gift for marriage, put this in calligraphy and put it in their home. وَلَا تَنْسَوُا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. نَسِيَ يَنْسَى. What does it mean? To forget. Fadl. Literally means virtue, fadail. But it means the extra things you do. They say that if a man opens the car door for his wife, either the car is new or the wife is new. Either the car is new or the wife is new. It's these small things you do in the beginning of marriage that give marriage its substance and that give marriage its goodness to it. But as time progresses, I had a group of middle-aged friends, and I said to them, I'm like, I had a situation when I needed some clarity. Situation was that there was this guy and girl. They were talking. Guy wanted to get married. Girl seemed great. Everything was good. Everything ticked off. There was one problem. Communication. She didn't really talk much. And he asked me, he said, Mufti, he's like, she doesn't communicate a lot. Everything else is great. She's not a great communicator. But does that mean that she's also like, it's probably a positive because that means she's not going to be clingy. So do I go for communication or do I go for clingy? Like, which one do I take it or not? I don't know. So I asked some of my friends, I was like, what happens with you guys? All I see you guys do is trying to leave your homes. Trying to always, you're married with your kids and all you're trying to do is escape your home, be out. So then they told me, they said, look, the moment your wife has a kid, your love is going to be half. And the second kid, the love will get even less. And then they all said to me, they said, as a man, she's focused, her focus was you. You were her world. Then they became her world. And he said, you have to put in the work. If you want to salvage your relationship and you want to have a good relationship, you have to work even harder than you did in the beginning of marriage. If you want to have that respect and love and mahabbah to grow, and you just don't want existence to happen. So the point I want to mention out of rights is that if you fixate yourself, this is my right, this is your right, your relationship won't grow. A relationship will grow when each person says, how can I make the other happy? I don't want anything in return. How can I make the other person happy without expectations? If I'm doing something for your mom, because I want you to do the same for my mom, I'm not doing it because I'm a good husband or a good wife. I'm doing it because I want something back. I'm needy. I'm matlabi. I'm needy. I'm matlabi. Okay. Back to the marriage talk. So don't live on what you just have to do. That's the first thing. And I gave this whole premise for a reason. Because though intimacy is the right of the husband, you are not allowed to take your right forcefully from anybody. So let's say that, where's Magda? Magda has $20 of mine in his car. I know he has it. I know him for 4 years. Boy hasn't paid me back. That one time that we went out, still now, he hasn't given it back to me. Can I forcefully go and take that money? No, I can't forcefully take it. You can't go to your parents and forcefully take something from them. The Prophet ﷺ said, "La yahillu mal imri muslimin illa bi tibi nafsihi." You can't take anyone's stuff forcefully. Same applies to your right. Now, does that mean that you can just forego your right for no reason? You can't do that as well. Because the institution of marriage is there to protect fitna. When spouses, if you cannot uphold an intimate relationship with your spouse, and a lot of spouses go through this, and that leads to infidelity, and it leads to divorce, and it leads to broken homes inside, and it leads to bad role models for children. It's because of the mistakes you made in your youth. So now, if you struggle, and inshallah nobody does, but if that point comes where your spouse becomes repulsive to you, and you cannot stand the touch of them or the look of them, and you're just rowing the boat of marriage, you have one of two choices, my dear brother or sister. Either re-engage or go through a platform of re-engagement, and if you feel that you cannot do it, then terminate the nikah. Because neither of you two can fulfill the foundation of nikah, and one of you, if not both of you, will fall into fitna and sin. Because that is the institution and purpose of it. So, of course, it's common. Someone's not in the mood, it's something, they're not feeling well, health, they just had children. There's a bunch of things that can happen, right? That's fine. But we're talking about the situation of a person who hates their spouse so much that they're just hanging on to it for their children for whatever reason. Either you forego the right that we don't care about intimacy, we're too old, it's not important for us, or you uphold it. Any questions before I move on to the next point? Okay. The next point is, and was it being recorded, right?
Cut it again.
Yeah, cut this one. Twice.
Did any of the Sahaba ever get like a divorce? Like the close Sahaba?
Did any of the Sahaba get a divorce?
Yes.
Which Sahabi didn't? They were chill, man. Abu Bakr then would divorce a woman, and like his boy Umar would marry afterwards. Like they were chill. It was like the boys, like yeah. Oh, my friends got divorced. Yeah, I got you, bro. Yeah, it didn't work out with my wife. Yeah, I got you, bro. I'll marry her. I'll take care of her. And like they were really cool about it. And there's this actual story of this one sister who was married to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and she gave all this poetry. My husband is the best, and he's this, that. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passed away. So Umar radiallahu anhu married her. And then Umar radiallahu anhu, she would make poems about him. No man is like Umar, and Umar was the best. And then he passed away too. He got married to Uthman. It was like 3 Sahaba. It finally came to Ali radiallahu anhu. I don't remember the exact order. And then this Sahaba started making fun of her too. They were like, wait. She's just waiting for you to die, bro. Once you're done, there'll be another poem after you. So the Sahaba were very normal about it. I mean, just Zayd bin Haritha, the Prophet's adopted son. You can't get a better person than the one who grew up in the Prophet's home. Marries Zainab bint Jahash, radiallahu anha, the Prophet's cousin. You can't get better than the boy raised in the Prophet's home. You can't get better tarbiyah than that. And you can't find a girl that's better than the one through whose veins flow the very same blood that flows through the veins of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And guess who's the one who's doing the matchmaking? The Prophet. The Prophet's like, I think y'all are going to be great. What happens? They can't get along. Two people can be amazing, but not amazing for each other. It leads to a divorce. Allah commands the Prophet, marry Zainab now. And the Prophet ﷺ is told, tell Zayd to take the proposal. So the ex takes the proposal to the house of Zainab bint Jahash, knocks on the door. Man yaqra'ul bab, who's knocking on my door? Ana Zayd, it is Zayd. Zayd, our relationship is done now. It's not like the other Zayd that goes back into the DM over again. I'm sorry, I'll change. This time will be different. And Zayd responds and says, Zainab, you are such an amazing woman. And you deserve to be happy. I'm paraphrasing this. Very little bit. I'm not like putting too much masala on it. Very little paraphrasing. And then he says, congratulations, for I bring you the proposal of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These people's hearts were cleaner in divorces than our hearts are sitting in front of the Kaaba, my dear brother. The Sahaba's hearts were cleaner after a divorce than our hearts are after Hajj. Anyway, that's the huquq, right? Any question on the huquq side? No? What question should you ask? Now, there are 2 types of questions you're going to ask your future spouse. One is things that are important to you. For example, working, not working, hijab, not hijab, living with parents, not living with parents, lifestyle choices, financial decisions, where to live, right? These are like important things. The second thing is to come up with scenarios. You see, Maz, I know for a while, right? A few years. Adam, remember Maz in the beginning days? Right? Smart cookie. But over time, people change. And personalities change. He's one of my favorite kids. Same thing with spouses. Now that sounds like a really weird example. But the response you get from them doesn't mean they're going to give that same response to you 10 years later. They will change. So how do you measure it? Because you don't know, right? You develop scenarios and see their reaction, not their response. How does a person react in that scenario? What are their options? What goes through their mind? It doesn't mean that's what they're actually gonna do. But you get an idea that, is this the type of person that will be there with me if I have no money? Or they're straight up telling me that, no, listen, if you fail your your medical school, like no, your cousin Shahriyar is like that was also on my minder, right? Like you're in my geolocation. So food, what was I saying? Your deal breakers, you mentioned it before, but other scenarios, ask them that if I didn't have this, or if this thing happened, what happens tomorrow if you find out that a girl texted me? What happens tomorrow if you see a guy's text message on my phone? What happens if my father calls and says that, you know what, I need to see you home because your mom is sick? Put in scenarios and see how the responses are. At best, your spouse will reflect on the response they gave, and they may do what they said, and at least you will understand how they handle a situation and how they react. Because tomorrow, this is the mahal your children will grow in. I mean, if I sit with all ages of people, I don't see elderly people like really engrossed in their spouses. It's kind of sad. Like as they get older, like marriage looks like a burden to them, and it feels heavy to them, and they feel so distant. So you want to make sure that you cradle this relationship all the way till the end. That even at the end, you're like, my Ustad Morna Suleiman Choksi. Seemed like a little player, right? In class, you can tell some of the advices he'd give us and stuff, but we didn't really know his wife. His wife passed away a few years ago. And for like a 62-year-old guy, he's pretty good looking for a 62-year-old guy. And people came to him and they're like, marry again, do this, do that, and students from all over. And Morna was like, there's no woman like this woman for me. She's passed on, but if I look at, no woman can replace the shoes of this woman for me. And then I had another teacher, Mufti Alauddin. Man was the most like roughest and like sternest person I've seen in my life. Again, 6 months ago, he told me, he said, Wasim Khan, he was telling me about his wife and what his wife does. He said, Wasim Khan, if Allah was to bring all the women from the first woman to the last woman in front of me and give me a choice, that which woman would you choose? He said, I would go back to my wife. Man's 75 years old. And I looked at him and I was like, now that is what you call love. You don't got teeth. You don't got this. You can't, but like, you're like after everyone, you're going to go back to the same person? Where our relationship, like, dude, if I had a second choice, swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. It would have never happened. I would have told my dad what kind of person you are. So see how people react. That's an important thing in their scenarios, the scenarios you place in front of them. What is their reaction? What is their response? How do they proceed? What is their thought process? What is their first escape? What's their first thing? You're getting in an accident. What's your first steps? You see a loss. You see something that's questionable. Doubt comes in. See how that person responds. Lastly, from the four things that we want, the number three. Sorry, we have two more things. Number three. Before I go on to number three, is there any questions about the second point I mentioned on questions? No? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So
If there's any detail you want on a certain topic, we can go on to it. But in the presence of time, that's why I'm rushing a bit. Go ahead.
So one of the questions you mentioned about the hijab. So is it their right to choose? Yes, I can wear hijab. No, I can't wear hijab. And like, what is like the men's duty during marriage for them?
Our duty is to buy a very long hijab and keep it ready. The moment we get married, the first thing, throw it on her. Hijab is an amal, is an action, just like any other deed and action. That is her decision at the end of the day, what action she's doing. It's your decision to accept that as a spouse or not. And personally, I think that I have seen women go from niqab, married niqab, and lose it and not have hijab or anything. And I have seen sisters never wear a hijab a day in their life, and then after marriage, completely changed. The main thing is the trajectory of this person. How is this person's heart? Is this person always longing to become better? This is the type of person that will wear a hijab, that will do, even if they're not wearing anything today, they're doing all the wrong today. But if their heart or their trajectory is, I want to become better, then this is a person that can become better. I'll give you an example. I work with youth all the time. I see a youth. I can tell right now he's not changing. He's not changing. Right now they're not doing it. But I can see that they have that fikr in their heart. If I spend enough time, one day it will pop and they will want to be better and they will become better. Same thing with the spouse. The trajectory. But if your spouse's first response is like, yeah, the hijab, like, I don't know, I do hijab of my heart. and from other boys, and like, I do hijab of the mind and hijab of the soul. We're like, hey, we get all that, right? But Islam has its own things to it. So I think more important than the question of hijab and non-hijab is, does this person want to become better, and are they actively trying? That's the key point that I want to focus on, because I think that, like, just because she's wearing a hijab doesn't make her a good girl, or just because he has a beard doesn't make him a good guy. Doesn't, like, these are just but actions. You can find terrible bearded people, terrible people who pray tahajjud, terrible people with hijab. It's the qalb, it's the heart, it's the personality of the individual. You see, all of this will change. This will beat the same. Everything changes besides this. Face changes, look changes, financial state, everything changes besides this. And the heart is, I was reading Sheikh Abdul Nasir's quote from today. Heart is fertile soil. Whatever you plant in it, it will grow. If you plant wrong haram and your spouse's mind is like, no, we gotta go. Like, their idea of a good time is partying. Their idea of a good time is smoking, drinking, going out. You know what trajectory it is on. And if their idea of a good time is like, yeah, we have a good time, but look, at the end of the day, I want to become a better person. I want to be better than I was last week, better than I was yesterday, better than I was an hour ago. That's the type of person you want to marry. And there's a reason why I'm saying all this. We didn't just make this relationship topic for the last 2 weeks just so that we can pull in a crowd in here. There's a purpose for it. The first thing is that, mashallah, most of you are at the age of marriage, right? The Sahaba at your age were grandparents. Y'all are late. They were like fighting in battles with their children and grandchildren. And yeah, so that's the thing. The second thing is that from next week, inshallah, we're actually starting a book called Al-Hikam Al-Ata'iyya. So every week we're going to have this majlis like this, but we're going to close the door a little early by like 6 o'clock or 6:15, just so that we don't have disturbance. But it has 30 advices or 30 topics in there. If you bring those 30 topics inside your life, you will be the best Muslim, the best husband, the best son, the best daughter, the best father, the best mother, the best friend, the best co-worker, the best person. Ibn Ata'illah Iskandariya's book is so phenomenal that very few have forget about studying it. Very few have read it and not changed their lives. That's how powerful that book is. This is my first time teaching it. I've read it in different forms and stuff before, but I promise you one thing. It is not called the Book of Wisdoms for no reason. It is one of the most phenomenal books. And if you can build in these 30 characteristics inside yourself, inshallah, you will be the perfect husband. You will be the perfect wife. You will be the perfect individual. You will be on that trajectory that maybe today you haven't stopped your haram and you haven't started praying. But at the end of this, inshallah, you will be that person who will be able to pray and enjoy their connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walking out of here and knowing what marriage requires doesn't mean you're ready for marriage. If you really want to be ready for marriage, get your tarbiyah done. If you can learn, if you have someone in your life that can blast and body slam your ego, guy or girl, if you have someone in your life that can body slam your ego, and you know how to stay quiet and take the L, I promise you, you are one of the best people that are ready for marriage. My students know. That's why they're laughing. Their egos get body slammed all the time. Besides my Plano kids. Barely. Was that more Frisco or Plano more? Frisco more? Or Plano more? No, Frisco didn't get anything. Plano did. Even I know that. Okay, so now moving on. That's the discussion on questions. The next point is how to quell disagreements. Every relationship is not measured by the good times. Relationships are measured by the fights they have inside. How does a person respond to the problems of marriage? The arguments. Do they let things go or do they get petty? Do they fight? Do they curse? If that person curses while they're normally talking, In an argument, they're going to obliterate you. And that's why cursing is such a bad thing. And the Prophet ﷺ said the sign of a hypocrite is when they get angry and they argue and they fight, they curse. وَإِذَا خَاصَمَ فَجَرَ. That when they get angry, they curse. So when you are going to get into things that you're not going to like about your spouse, not everything needs to be confronted. Not everything needs an explanation. Not everything needs a response at that moment. Learn to let things go. And if it still bothers you after a few days, diplomatically bring it back. You know, when you're working, right? How many of y'all have jobs here? Y'all got problems at jobs? Okay. Why do you put up with those problems?
Money.
Huh?
Money.
Money? You ain't worth the problem? Like, besides my job in Plano Masjid, every other job has problems, right? Every job's got some issues, right? You don't like a coworker, you don't like a boss, you know, they're saying things you don't agree with. Why do you put up with it? Because you want to preserve your career, right? Yeah. Right? Because it's your investment. Your relationship is the biggest investment of your life. Sometimes it's better to treat your spouse like a stranger, in the sense that, you know, in strangers you don't do things, like you're a lot more behaved. Your parents are also like a lot more nicer outside. Come home, I'll show you. You know, when I used to when we were small, in the car, all my mom had to do with the niqab, her eyes look at the rear view mirror, and that's it. Hamari maut nikal gayi, right? We knew that we were done at there. My mom would smile like beta. Or like if I'm talking to my dad and my dad's like, beta, kaise ho? I'm like, Dad, are you around anybody? And he's like, ha, beta. But I talk to you like this all the time. I'm like, we'll let you go now. But cradle the relationship. Remember that the wounds you inflict on your marriage will remain a lifetime. Those are scars. They're not forgotten. But you should learn to forget. And you should learn to let go. But seldom do people do it. They may forget, but the emotion remains, and the pain remains, and the hurt remains. So in order to quell arguments, always get mediation. Learn. There's nothing wrong in getting therapy for your marriage. It's not like your marriage is like stupid or something, or like weak if you're getting therapy. No. If you go, every person needs to go to the doctor to get some sort of regimen, some sort of health checkup. Same thing with your relationship. Your relationships needs a checkup. And not just somebody who you go to one time. Someone you go at least once a month, once every 2 months. Go back and check up. See if things are becoming distant. Why wait till there's a fight and there's fighting and there's yelling and everything gets so bad? Then people come to us, save our marriage. I'm like, bro, you broke the whole Lego thing, everything. When the one piece fell off, you should have came at that time. You came with the whole crushed Lego and said, can you please build this back up? I'm like, how are we going to build this thing back up? You should have came when there was one broken piece. The first fight, the second one, the third one. You came after the 300th one after 10 years. What are we going to do now? So my advice to you is get help. Get marital counseling. Premarital counseling is a must. And whichever imam, sheikh, scholar you choose, pick someone from your local community, wherever you're moving to, and stay with them, connected while you're in that area, and have them check up on them every 2-3 months. Check up, make sure the relationship is going okay. You have any, before you make a rash decision, run it through. Ask, what's the prophetic way? How would the prophet handle it? Because I promise you one thing, in my life, anytime I have tried to do something my way, I made a mistake. Anytime this is any generic decision in my life. Anytime I asked myself, how would the Prophet handle it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I reflected on the hadith and I did that, Allah only gave me khair. Allah only gave me good in my life. And that's my own personal experience. Lastly, the discussion of divorce, which we would have to probably make a whole new session for, talking about divorce and annulment and all of that stuff. So inshallah, we'll get to it in the upcoming weeks, inshallah. So we'll wrap up over here. I actually have some work after, but we'll give about 5-10 minutes for some Q&A if anyone has any questions, inshallah.
Can you explain the three divorces more in detail?
Okay, so this is going to be a long one. A Muslim, a man, has 3 divorces. The Prophet ﷺ said, "ثَلَاثٌ جِدُّهُنَّ جِدٌّ وَهَزْلُهُنَّ هَزْلٌ." There are 3 things that whether you are serious or joking, they happen. And one of them is divorce. So if you even in joke divorce your wife is divorced. Now, how does divorce occur? Divorce occurs in one of 2 ways. The first way is you clearly tell your spouse, I divorce you, in either past tense or present tense. Your wife is divorced. If you say it in the future tense, I will divorce you. You know, I'm so angry with you, I'm going to divorce you. That's not a divorce. A future tense isn't a divorce, present and past tense is. It's going to get really long if I start breaking down the whole divorce and what happens if you give 1, 2. But there's one key thing I want to mention. I'm going to say it now, but for further explanation, inshallah, we'll do a session on divorce. In the Hanafi fiqh alone, only in the Hanafi fiqh, if you are fighting and you are in an argument and you say words that could be interpreted as divorce, for example, get out of my face, I don't ever want to see you again, we're done, and your intention is to end the relationship even for a moment, that is a divorce according to the Hanafi fiqh. The Hanafis are very, very particular. And there's a reason why divorce is so sensitive in Islam. Many of us have parents here, and we've seen our parents get bullied about divorce all the time. I'll divorce you, I'll divorce you. And it's not. Imagine being in a relationship and a person has the right to let you go, and every few days they're saying, yeah, I'll let you go, I'll drop you. Who does that kind of stuff? So Sharia says you get 3 chances. Listen, you can't mess around. You can't say like, yo, I didn't mean it. No. Be careful what you say, because words have an effect. Out of all the words of marriage, if Allah should have given any word, if He should have lightened any word, it should have been the words of divorce. Why? It's because it could happen anytime. But Allah said, no. These words, you say it once, it happens and it occurs. Now, know that any word or anything you say in a marriage or relationship, it has an impact. You can't just say something. You can't just be like, yeah, your mom was like, your brother's kind of weird. You can't just say stuff. Your words have consequences. And Sharia reminds us about this in divorce. But it's a long discussion on talaq raj'i, talaq bain. Because if you give a literal divorce, you can take your wife back. If you give a metaphorical divorce, you can't take your wife back. You have to get your nikah done again. So for example, if you tell your wife and you're super angry and you're like, get out of here, I don't ever see you again, and you intended divorce, you can't just call her back. You have to get a new nikah done again. And meaning that she has to be okay with it. For the sisters, my sister is in Alima and she's in town. I was thinking next week or the week after, if you guys want, we can just make it a sister session. Would you guys be interested in that? Ask all questions and stuff? We can do that maybe next week or the week after, inshallah. Set that up. Any other questions?
In the marriage process, when 2 people are getting to know each other, at what point does there have to be a mahram, and like there doesn't have to be a mahram anymore? So
Sharia doesn't actually tell you that you need to have a mahram, right? It doesn't actually say that. What it does say is that 2 people aren't alone, but shaitan is the 3rd one. So you shouldn't have that aloneness because there's a chance of fitna. When it's muddy, even an elephant slips. No one makes, it just happens, right? And those sins, if this is the person you're going to stay with for the rest of your life, you're going to remember that you've always sinned with them. And you're going to be asking Allah forgiveness from the things you did with them. You can't love someone and touch them and make that touch the very touch that they will be in hell for. You can't really say that boy really don't love you if he's willing to have you stand in front of the court of Allah. And that girl really don't love you if they're the mechanism of you getting messed in the hereafter. It's not real love. So know your boundaries. And Sharia leaves it like generic, right? There isn't any actual rule that, okay, you need to have a 6 feet distance and make sure you wear a mask and wear gloves when you're around each other. No. There is no like CDC guidelines or Sharia guidelines in marriage. It's be smart. Istafti qalbak. Just know that your Allah knows what you are thinking and what you are doing. And know that your Allah has your future planned. That's it. So be smart about it. The moment you feel like you can slip, that's when you need to plug. Get a third person involved. The third person isn't involved like, we have to keep it halal, halal, halal. Let's get someone over here. Let's make it halal. It doesn't like, it's not like some type of like Bismillah Allahu Akbar, right? Some slaughtering of your relationship. But you bring the third person in for your own protection. So you keep yourself in check and you don't slip. And you don't end up doing something haram and ruining the foundation of marriage before the marriage even begins. Because it's like a field. And if you're putting haram inside, you're corrupting your field. And one day that field will give you crops that are bad.
So necessarily there doesn't have to be a mahram.
No, public setting is fine too. I mean, I'm thinking about it. Like, if you want to talk to a girl, get to know someone, or a guy, if you're going to go tell your dad or your brother, if a sister says, uncle's going to get a call, aunt's going to get a call, your cousin's going to like be coming to America very soon to see you. But yeah, I think just be smart about it. And I think you guys should get married young. Like especially in the times and the fitnas, don't go through a bunch of experiences. Learn to forgive, learn to let go, learn to get your tarbiyah done. If you can get your tarbiyah done, learn to let go, learn to forgive, and stay quiet, ready for marriage. When you get married, Allah will put barakat in your rizq. Don't sit there being like, does he have a job? Does he have a car? Does he have a home? Your daddy didn't have any of those things. Your mommy didn't have any of those things when she went to that house. All your dad had was hair that time, and he had nothing else. Today you want a guy with hair and a house and a car and this. No. You can get some of these things. Allah doesn't give all of the above to everybody. Illa mashallah. So marry young, protect your iman, protect yourself, and rizq, and that will come from Allah's side. That will come from Allah. Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
How do you know if you're mentally ready for marriage?
So you're going to doubt marriage all the time, especially when it gets really close to the engagement, the wedding. You're going to trip out so much. You're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Do istikhara and leave it in Allah's hands and move forward. You see, anyone, and I don't want to make this marriage sound like a battle, but anyone who's going into something intense knows they can't do it, but still does it with the leap of faith. Anything you do, whether it was medical school, whether school, college, anything you did, where does it come? I don't know if I can do it. But then you end up doing it. Tawakkal ala Allah. You're going to make mistakes. Remember, those who are married are also not mentally ready for marriage. Forget about the ones who are not married. But make yourself a better person. And I think you're okay. I'll endorse you. We will produce these new Isra stamps. And our boys who are good, we will stamp them. Anyone else? What can you tell? What actions and? What am I looking? Okay, very good question. When you are asking people scenarios and reactions, what reactions are you looking for? Reactions that you can handle. Everyone deals with situations differently. For example, some people like talking about problems. Some people don't like talking about it. Now, what kind of person are you? Do you want to talk about your problems or do you not want to talk about your problems? Some people like a fast-paced life. Some people don't. Some people are very forgiving. Some people are not. Some people have a certain insecurities and some people don't. So how do you feel about that response? Is that response comfortable to you? Can you work with that or not? Everyone is different. An introvert will respond differently. Extrovert will respond differently. A person who's living with their family versus someone who's alone, a younger person versus an older person, everyone will respond differently. And it's ajib, right? It's because like anything you look at in marriage in Islam, there isn't this like clear-cut guidelines. No, Islam largely leaves it up to us and tells you to make good choices. And that's what I tell people. Even last time I said it too. That quote, what did I say? I forgot about it after that. Simon tweeted it. What was it?
The cause of like damaging sins is that there was no self motivation.
There we go. I said that once. I know. I didn't say you stole it. Simon's also Isra endorsed young man. No, but the point I'm trying to say is that the problem is that when you're not cognizant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you don't see that Allah is looking at what you're doing, that's where you'll make your mistakes, right? So as long as a person is reflective that my Allah is watching me, and I doesn't, if I am worried about how I'm going to get out of this situation with my spouse, that's not a right person, because they'll figure you out and they'll be able to tell you what you want to hear to get you back and being interested. But that person who understands that after my spouse, I have to stand before Allah and respond to Allah, that person will never hurt you. Because that person knows that it's not XYZ that whose opinion at the end. No, at the end of the day, whatever I do today, I have to tell Allah about it. And how many women will stand before Allah and say our husbands abused us? And how many men will say that about their women? It goes both ways. I know so many guys that get whooped at home. So many guys. People love tall girls. And then they come back, get knocked out. A friend came to me, he said it. I was like, you were so happy a few years ago. He's like, no, I'm still happy. Alhamdulillah. He's like, she hits me at home, not in front of other people. So I'm telling you for du'as. That's it. Don't tell anybody. It's not being recorded, right? Oh. He doesn't have Instagram. It's okay. It's on YouTube? It's on YouTube? No, it's fine. He's not going to get married again. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Well, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Do you have to disclose your past sins to your spouse?
I spoke about that last time. I said that the prophetic way is don't ask about past sins. However, if a spouse wants to ask, that is their right. If a sister or a guy has spent their entire life protecting themselves in an environment that we live in, it's their right to ask. But don't cap the answer. The problem isn't asking the question. That's not the problem. The problem is the response going to be honest or not.
So they have a right to ask. Do you have a right to answer? Do you have to?
I mean, it's not about the right. It's their choice, right? And do you have to answer? Like, what do you mean, like, do you have to answer?
Like, let's say, for example, I don't know, let's make up a scenario.
No, let's not. Let's do this one.
Okay, so let's say, for example, like, you have a deal breaker.
No. I want to know this one, because I want to know how you're going to escape this one. She's like, did you have exes? What are you going to say? How would you avoid that question? Because I think these guys are trying to learn.
Okay. I mean, it depends the extent of those relationships. But like, say, okay, for example, for me,
That's not a good answer. You do not respond, but it depends on the extent of the relationships.
So for me, I'll tell you my specific scenario. For me, zina is a complete deal breaker. So if I have a right to ask, she has to answer truthfully.
I mean, if anyone asks you any question, you have to answer truthfully. That's any question. It's not like only for marriage you become a truthful person. Everywhere else you're a liar. No. You're just honest regardless. If you're not comfortable with answering that, you tell them, I don't want to answer this. And if this is a deal breaker for you, that's fine. But don't lie, because that person has a right to know if that's important to them. That's their happiness, right?
Yeah.
That's what they find attraction to. Not everyone finds attraction to a certain physical attributes. Some people find attraction to qualities. Some people like humor. Some people like what's that one thing? Yeah, humor and traveling. Any sister, you put that in your biodata, it goes everywhere. Every single one of them. It's like there was a whole huge group chat, and they all decided that these are the two things we are united on: humor and group chat. Right? So, like, but all jokes aside, some people have that stuff. And think about it: if you spent an entire life away from haram, and you're talking to this person who's like, yeah, I don't know, like, I don't know if I'd really call them relationships. I mean, those ships are a bit rocky, but
Of course.
like, that's their right.
You have a right to ask for like what you like, say if you abstain from all this stuff, you have a right to
Yeah.
ask for somebody who did the same.
Yeah. It's like, to be honest, right? You have people who like exercising, and they'll ask their spouse, "Do you exercise?" "Yeah, 5 times a day." No, brother, you're praying salah. That's not exercising, right? You're just sitting there lying and trying to make yourself feel more than you are. No, don't lie. There's no barakah in it.